Hello and welcome to this week's video. I'm going to be using this photograph of my husband along with this Marion Smith paper, a Crafts Companion stamp and some vintage photo ink. So I'm just cutting this paper out. Now I had two sheets of this paper and from this one I have cut this embellishment. So I'm going to just cut that title off, pop that to a side after I've just gone round it, and I'm going to go round this to make this into an embellishment for my page. I quite like this Mad Hatter Tea Party paper. I've got a couple of sheets of it. I've used it on a few layouts and I am in the process of trying to finish off some kits and finish off some collections that I have. So this is me trying to use the last of this kit, which probably won't be the very last of it. I always seem to be able to eke out yet another piece of, project out of it, but here we go. This is one on my husband and yet another silly Snapchat filter. So I've just cut all the way around there and I am using a distress ink in Vintage Photo. I haven't used straight distress inks for some time, so I thought it was time I started using them again, although I found the pad for this one, because it's one of my favourite colours, is starting to disintegrate a little bit, so I'm getting a few little bits that end up on the mat after I've used it. So I'm going to pop that down in that corner. That's where it is actually going to go. I've got a doily out and I've also taken that title that I cut off and inked around that. And now I'm just finding some paper to back the photograph with, and I'm popping the title on the back of here because I want a little bit of the green to be poking through around the title. So I'm just going to pop that on there and put that aside to let that dry while I'm doing everything else. So now I'm coming in with the Tim Holtz paper distresser. So I'm distressing all around the outside of this, and this will give a nice feathered appearance around this, and then I'm going to come in and ink around the edges of that after, just to make that pop a little bit. So we're coming in there with the Vintage Photo, and this just makes it stand out a little bit more on the page. So here we go. Now I'm going to be using some white paint here because I want to dampen down some of this image in the background, just off to the side, because I want to use that stamp that I had out. So I am just going around this and I'm spraying a bit of water to thin out the paint a little bit, because I would like to have some sort of shadows of the stamped images on this piece of paper. The paper, by the way, was Marion Smith's Mad Tea Party collection. And then I have this Crafter's Companion stamp that I'm using. I've not used this one before, so I'm going to test it out on a spare sheet of paper. So I'm thinking about this image because not only does it have the clocks like the background, but it also has some butterflies on it. And because I want to see the butterflies, I'm getting out my jelly plate and I'm going to stamp directly onto the jelly plate, and then take the jelly plate and stamp onto my page. That will reverse the image so the butterflies are on the other side, because there is a butterfly at the very top of my embellishment that I cut out above the writing, so I want to sort of bring those together. And as I'm going to be covering most of the clock part, you're not actually going to see that the clock is backwards. So I'm just going to go around this title and cut round that and find a little bit of this green. Now I think I want it a little bit darker, so I turn it on the side and take the paper from there. I'm trying to work out whether I actually want that yellow edge or whether I just want it green around the photograph, and I figured because I can't have the edge all the way around, I'm going to cut that off and I'm just going to have the green. And again, I'm going to distress the edges of this, and I will also ink them so that it's in fitting and in keeping with the rest of the page. So just doing that, just tidying up a little bit there because there's a lot of little bits and pieces. So I like that there in that sort of position, and I'm going to just cut the little bit of the writing that I took here. It says, "It's always tea time." So quite liked that. And now I think I might distress all the way around the page. I don't do this very often. I don't distress the outside corners very often, but I thought with this page it would just look quite nice because you've actually got that yellow border, very thin sort of rustic border that already looks distressed, so it just holds it all together, and we give it a bit of an ink as well. So now I've decided to use the antique linen so that I'm taking the brightness out of this doily. It was very bright and I didn't want so much white on this page, and I'm also going round to dampen down the starkness of this white on the background, but I'm not going to do the clock face, so the clock face will appear a little bit brighter in colour. You can pick that up a little bit on the camera. It's a little bit more striking in person. So I'm just going to start layering these down. You can also see on the side there I have a paper that has little cards, and I'm just bringing that in now. Quite liked the background, and it was really hard cutting into this to take these tags, but they do suit the page better, so I've had to give up that beautiful patterned paper on the back in lieu of wanting a few of these cards for this project. So I might have to steal as much as I can for perhaps the last layout with this kit at a later stage. I have cut out one from the top and quite a few from the middle so that I actually could layer this piece of paper down, or that piece of paper down, at some point on another project, cover up the hole that I've cut in the middle and pop something in one corner, and it might even still look like a whole piece of paper. The tricks of the trade as we know it. So the little cards here, one of them has the teapot again on it, and it says, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" And the other one has the clock and a rabbit on it, and it says, "If I had a world of my own, everything would be nonsense." And I thought that went perfectly with this photograph. So I've just gotten out my Japanese screw punch and punched some holes so that I can add some string to these little tags, just to bring in another little bit more dimension, and just to give a little bit more interest. So I'm popping that through on there. I am going to come in with a bit more string at the end of this page to jazz this up just a little bit more. Using a little bit of the vintage photo on the doily just to darken the edges a little bit, and pretty much the page has come together the way I want it, so I think I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to start sticking these things down. So we put some tape on the photograph. Now, the other thing I sometimes do, which I'm coming in here to show you, the branding strip that I cut off this piece of paper so often goes straight into the bin, but I often use them by gluing them together and using them as my little razors for the photograph, so that I've got a little pocket. When I put all this together, I'll have a little pocket that I can slide my little card into, and it's a good way of recycling the paper rather than it just ending up in the bin. And then it saves you some money as well, because you're not putting things like foam pads across here, and yes, you're minimizing the waste that you've got. So there's a little tip for you. Now I'm just working out where that tag's going to go. I quite like it in there, and now we're going to pop these back and start sticking them in place. So I'm coming in there with some foam pads to lift those ones up. Again, I could use the branding strip from another piece of paper or another little offcut, but right now I am using some foam pads for this, as I'm just using a little bit, and it's a fiddly sort of shape really, so that's what I'm doing there. I like that tag there, so I'm going to stick that down and then get a little bit more tape in order to stick the doily so that we're in place. And I'm also coming in with a tiny bit of glue as well, just to give it some extra hold. So repositioning that card there, I did think about putting it on a bit of an angle, but actually I prefer it more straight. So I'm going to come in here with a little bit of tape and also some foam pads on the embellishment, just because that is raised up, so we don't want that to be stuck straight down flat on the page. And I've got a little bit of tape, and I'm also using a little bit of glue just to make sure this holds. This is not going anywhere once it's stuck down. So we are just putting the last embellishments in place. I wasn't 100% sure where I was popping all of these, and so I did play around with them. I did look at putting a little bit of a branding strip on there, but just going to go with the few foam pads. I do this sometimes because once I have finished it off, sometimes I decide to go in with some ribbon or whatever. Candy's come to say hello today. She hasn't been in the video the last couple of videos. I've managed to get away without her interruptions, although we love her interruptions. So I'm going to come in with a little bit of strength. I have ripped the side of the page, and I hear you all gasp when I did that. I'm sticking it down so you can't really tell that it's been ripped, but as the page is distressed anyway, I didn't feel that that was going to be a problem. So I'm just coming in with this string just to give a little bit more dimension, a little bit more interest, and to kind of anchor that all the way down the page and anchor it into that corner. So cut off that little bit of an offcut, and then I'm tying a bow, and that easily slid down so that it didn't cover any of the other embellishments on the page. Now I'm going to pop this title in now that I know where I'm going to put it, and just some foam pads on the back of it and a little bit of glue to stick it to that other card. And I'm going to write on this, draw some lines, and my journaling just says, Captain Kevin, having a good old time with Snapchat. He loves silly filters, blowing bubbles with a pipe. And of course the hat was part of the filter as well. So just finishing off writing that on there. And there is just two more things that go onto this page. The Crafter's Companion stamp that had the butterflies and clock also had a nice writing that said, if not now, when? And I kind of thought that was a nice title. And I have a few butterflies just to continue the theme. So I am sticking a couple more butterflies around the place. Now I've stuck that one down under the photograph, really didn't like it, struggled to get it up. I kind of thought it would be nice just to have a tiny bit of clear space there. And the last thing, of course, as always, is a cat, and who could resist putting the cat on the chair? I certainly couldn't. It was the first thing my husband noticed when I finished it. So I hope you like the page. I hope you're all taking care of one another. Yes, enjoy the video. And crafting is a great way to relieve stress. See you next time. Bye.